in Acts chapter 2 verse 1 to 4, the Bible says on the day of Pentecost that the Spirit came like a mighty rushing wind, filled the place where they were gathered in one accord. And you know what? It sat upon heads, and they began to pray in tongues. And the Spirit gave them utterance. So the Spirit first sat on their heads and then gave them utterance. If you read scriptures, you also understand in the Bible when Mary was actually visited by the angel, the Bible says the angel began to tell him of many wondrous things. And he said, how would this thing be? And he said, the Spirit of the Lord Almighty will actually what? Visit you, will overshadow you. He said, and that thing that shall be born of what? Of you shall be called a Son of God. His name shall be Jesus. So the Spirit visits, sits upon, overshadows, and then you become pregnant. Those are two scriptures that talks about the visitation of the Holy Ghost. He first sits upon you, then he engulfs you, and then you carry him. Now I'm going to liken the birth of Jesus and his conception by Mary to DUNAMIS. When Mary actually conceived Jesus, the Bible says, is the wisdom and the power of God. So Jesus himself is what? Is power personified. So Mary actually what? Conceived Jesus as power within. So the Bible says that when Mary actually conceived of Jesus, she visited who? Elizabeth. And when Elizabeth saw her, they began to what? To communicate. The Bible says that the baby in the womb of Elizabeth leaped, and then she began to prophesy. What is the relationship between Mary being pregnant of Jesus and Elizabeth being pregnant of John? And then she began to prophesy because she was pregnant in the womb. So how did they lead to prophecy? What's the link? Because Mary was literally full of God. So by interfacing with Elizabeth, she activated the Holy Ghost in her. Mary literally carried Jesus in Holy Ghost form. That's what DUNAMIS. Jesus was a baby, was a fetus in the womb. But in explaining further what transpired in that scenario is the fact that Mary also conceived Jesus, because Jesus was the power of God. So Jesus was a raw power of God, was the DUNAMIS of God. So in an intercourse with another person, she overshadowed and overbore on her that she began to speak in tongues. The Bible says she began to prophesy. How does a pregnant woman see another pregnant woman and let prophecy? Because what she was carrying was not just a baby, it was power. That's the interpretation of DUNAMIS. Because I don't want to go too far into power. I want to talk about righteousness. I'm just trying to lay a foundation for you. It's just a revelation. She literally carry power. Because it doesn't matter the kind of prophet they're going to bring out to your generation. You are pregnant. Oh, they say you have the next apostle in your womb. It has never been heard before that by the visitation of someone who is pregnant, another person begins to prophesy and speak in tongues. Because Jesus was the raw power of God, even in the flesh. That's DUNAMIS. That's just a literal translation of that. Before you can know how to partner with angels, we have to learn what man is. What man is actually in the scheme of God. What man is actually in the scheme of God is not what man looks like now. That is why it is a big deal to interface with angels. But when man comes to the full stature of Christ, because Christ is the stature of man, Christ is the standard of man, Christ is the template of man. The reason why we are shortchanged in life and destiny is because we have no reason to the stature of Christ. Christ is the standard, not Paul. Paul might be the greatest Christian who has ever walked the earth, but Paul is not the standard for Christianity. Christ is. It means everything that Jesus was while he was on earth is our expectation. So we're not just to walk into his power dimension, we have to live in character. We are talking about power, praying in tongues, the supernatural, but you host bitterness in your heart. You are an envious person, you gossip, you can't trap it. So it's not more about the pursuit of power, it's about the retention. It's not more about the pursuit of power, it's about the preservation of power. God is raising men that can trap power, because you can be temporary carrier, but men who can trap it for life. Can I shock you? There's the dead. How come? So when God expects you to trap power, it is beyond this lifetime. Your corpse will be able to raise dead people. That's the standard. They didn't even know what was there, and they took a dead person and threw this dead person into his tomb. And the Bible says when this person touched the bones, the very dry bones of Elisha, raised a dead man, because that bone carried power. So we have a generation of power pursuers who can't trap it. The trapping of power is in character. Be a professing Christian. Be a Christian by character.